Right, comrades, following on from last week's discussion, which was about the 40th anniversary of the miners' strike, today we're seeing a film to do with the Battle of Orgreave, and there'll be a discussion around that with John Dunn taking the lead on that issue. I think as far as the Battle of Orgreave is concerned, it epitomises in my mind all that there is to know about the class struggle. The Battle of Orgreave, I've seen one film about the Battle of Orgreave, and I think it was done by either Channel 4 or the BBC. And basically it summed up, if you like, the enemy that we're facing. An enemy, I think, was described, was it by Marx, as red in tooth and claw. The position was one, in the film I saw, that it was a nice summer's day and that it was a bit of an outing for miners to go on a picket of a coking plant in Yorkshire. On the other hand, you had the forces of the state, and I'm talking here about the police, ready to go into serious battle. And when I say battle, I mean to seriously injure and to do what damage they could to the miners who were there on that day. Not just in the physical attacks on the miners, but also, as will come out, the fact that, I think it was at the Battle of Orgreave, that people were charged with riot. And if I'm not mistaken, that charge, if it carried in court, had a maximum penalty of life imprisonment. So it wasn't, if you like, some charge that you would get off with a caution, that you would get off, and told not to do it again, or a fine. This was serious stuff. And as we've seen in discussions about the miners' strike, that our class enemy, the capitalists, were prepared to use the courts, the police, and also, let's be quite blunt about it, the people who should be the leadership of our class, i.e. the trade union leaders, who reneged on just about everything they could, with a few honourable exceptions. The railwaymen, the railway workers were the main one. My own union, the engineering union, carried out levies throughout the strike. But again, it was solidarity that was needed, not collections, as far as this went. And I think, as was discussed last week, the coking plant at Orgreave was an absolute key to British capitalism. And the trade union leadership were prepared to see the miners defeated rather than upset capitalism. Within 10 years, the capitalism that they were defending, i.e. manufacturing industry, had been virtually destroyed. I worked in a big engineering factory for GEC, and I seen that decimated along with the rest of GEC, which was a huge multinational, if you like, company. So without further ado, I would ask if John could come in and introduce the film. John Dunn, that is.
Yeah, this was made shortly after strike by Yvette Vanson, a renowned filmmaker, once married to top legal man Mike Mansfield. And even though it's a bit dated, it captures everything. It's emotional, it's violent, and it deserves to have had a wider circulation than just on Channel 4. And it's tragic that now Channel 4 used to do things like this, but now recently they did a video about the 40th anniversary at strike. They did 3, of which 2 were just making scabs out as heroes and never questioning them. So, yeah, please watch it all the way through. I find it gut wrenching after all these years. I'll be honest, and knowing some of the people who were victims on that day makes it even more raw for me. I think that's enough for the time being.
Apologies.
And you got the working class supporting the miners and the trade union leaders doing all that they could to sabotage any support for the miners. I'll pass it over to John Dunn and see what he has to say, because I think going through a film like that, because you're seeing people that you knew, you're seeing people who this government was out to wreck their lives. Make no bones about it. A cousin in America wondered why people hated Margaret Thatcher in this country, and I tried to enlighten him because of the work that she'd done and the preparations they'd made. So I'll pass it over to John Dunn.
Yeah, just brief, because I think that film, as dated as it is brilliant. I'll be honest, I still find it a very emotional watch, and I've watched it dozens and dozens of times. I've introduced it in public meetings, etc. And you're right, John, knowing some of the people who were involved makes it even closer to home. Arthur Critchlow, who I know very well, still suffers with PTSD 40 years later, because these people didn't just have what happened to them. What the film doesn't necessarily make clear is they went through a year on strike, they suffered all them beatings and frame ups, but they had to wait 15 months after being arrested before they got in court. So for 15 months, they didn't know whether they were going to go. 55 of them didn't know if they were going to go to jail for life, and that has to have an effect that you don't shake off. A friend of mine, Kevon, a fellow Orgreave campaigner, he was arrested and charged that day, and he were actually helping the police. This copper asked him, would he help him clear road for an ambulance to get through? And he did, and then they arrested him because they got to make numbers up. And, the trial collapsed because the secret manual came to light. They found out that much of the evidence had been forged, and that statements had been dictated to policemen, what they had to say. And there were 8,200 coppers there that day. 8,200. Now, Orgreave had been, from our point of view, had been meticulously planned. But what we didn't know at that time is that there an MI5 spy in our very ranks, a fellow named Roger Windsor. So all this information were being shared, and none of those coppers who perjured themselves, Clements, the assistant chief constable, who that film shows lied from start to finish, none of them have ever been charged with perjury. And Clements went on to become promoted and be a chief constable, etc., etc. There's a new film out that, if you can see it, it's on cinema release, called Strike, an Uncivil War. And if you like, picks up where this left off, and it's even better than this one. So I'll leave it at that. As I say, it guts me to my core to watch that.
Okay, thanks, John. I don't know if any comrades want to come in and share any thoughts, ideas, or what have you. I see no hands raised at the moment.
Can I just add one point, John?
Yeah.
Orgreave is only the tip of a very big iceberg. There's a campaign for an inquiry into it because that footage went out on national news within hours of the police riot, and actually the BBC reversed the footage to back the police up. But that sort of thing were happening almost every day. You have police riots in villages, you had cavalry charges through narrow village streets, you had all those sort of beatings, and as Arthur says, and they were determined to inflict what they could on us. And Michael Mansfield points out 11,000 of us, myself included, arrested. That's the population of more than most mining villages. That sums it up.
Okay, thanks, John. I think myself, going back to the miners' strike, coming from Manchester, there was a few pits around Lancashire, but most of the pits by that time in Lancashire had closed. In the centre of Manchester, we had a very big pit, and that was Bradford Colliery, and that was closed. And as far as I understand, it was closed because it was a militant pit, and the Lancashire the Lancashire NUM, I think, was traditionally right wing, and if you like, there was more than a touch, I think, of Catholic action involved in it. And despite the fact that when the miners' strike started, Sid Vincent, who was the I don't know what you call him, General Secretary of the Lancashire NUM, said they would stand solidly with Yorkshire and with the strike. But I didn't get the feeling that there was a lot done in Lancashire. And I know for a fact that there were roadblocks preventing people going to, pickets, that, it was just, if you like, the state really being prepared. And it was nothing to do with the miners' strike as such, but myself and a number of people from Manchester used to go over to Clay Cross on a fairly regular basis. And at one time, who was the MP there now? Oh, God.
The MP now?
No, then.
Then it was...
Dennis Skinner.
No, Dennis Skinner was never MP for...
No, he was an MP for...
Next constituency, Bolzo. Yeah. We had a mining MP, Ray Ellis.
Yeah, but Dennis Skinner told us that, I think in one of the neighbouring constituencies, there had been a tragedy. And it just showed you the callous attitude of some of the thing. I don't know if it was a BBC or ITV cameraman, when they'd taken up the dead miners, after the I think it was a roof collapse, and it killed several miners. They asked him, can't you get these bodies laid out for a good camera thing? And he really went up in the air about it. He was telling us that the way that things were twisted, he gave us a bit of if you like, a tutorial on how to deal with the press, particularly if you were on a live interview on television. And he said, if they ask you a really awkward question, you say, well, I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch what you were saying. Would you repeat the question? In the meantime, you'd have time to think. Because he said that as far as the left were concerned, the media, by and large, hated the left and were out to, really distort people. Well, that's, if you like, an aside. Is there any other comrades who would like to comment? No, because it's been I think the film itself spoke volumes. And as I say, it showed the true, in my opinion, the true class nature of society, and the fact that lies and distortions were part of the stock in trade, apart from the brutality. No, if there's no comrades wishing to come in, because for 2 weeks now we have gone over, if you like, the miners' strike and that, and I think we've had a fairly full, explanation. So, Roger, do you want to come in and say what's be happening in the next week or two?
Yes. First of all, I'm overwhelmed by what I saw. I think we all are. Absolutely stunning. It really brings to life the class struggle, and the words at the end were really heartening. These people who've been through so much, who raised the banner once again and said that they would fight all over again, and the fight is still on. The class struggle is still on, and we still have the same task of overcoming this vicious, brutal system. I apologize for my technical incompetence and the glitches at the beginning, but now I've learned something for future reference. Next week, among all the spate of elections that have been taking place around the world, there's the Indian election where the would-be dictator Modi suffered a quite a humiliating setback. We're having a comrade from India, Maya John, who is going to be explaining, putting this in the context, explaining what this means, and sketching out perspectives for the class struggle in India. So I look forward to seeing comrades again next week.
Okay, comrades. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for their attendance. And despite the fact that, there hasn't been a long discussion, that, it has been a very enlightening meeting. And on that note, I'd like to say thank you very much and declare the meeting closed. See you next week.
I think
sorry,
yeah.
David, do you want to come in?
Well, I can see the effect on John's face, and that's also the effect on our face. In a way, we were stunned, by the ferocity, the violence there. It was an extraordinary time with horses being used against people, batons being used. Blood was everywhere. It was, it is kind of deeply affecting. So please, John, know that we are being kind of stunned in response, and you need to stand back to be able to see all the developments which happened then and the impact that it's had now in Britain and internationally. But thank you.
Okay, thank you, comrade. Okay.
Okay, bye, comrades.
Now.
Bye.